This is part 2 of the Blood on the Tracks series, so for those of you who watched last week's video, welcome back, but for those of you who didn't, Blood on the Tracks is about a high school student named Seiichi and his overprotective mother. One day while on a hiking trip, Seiichi's mother gets so overprotective of him that when his cousin was picking on him, she pushed him off a cliff in front of Seiichi. However, she manipulated everyone into thinking that he just fell. The series follows how manipulated and abused Seiichi is from his own mother as each volume just gets even worse. Last video ended with Seiichi's cousin, Shige, waking up from his coma and muttering his first words. So let's see how this series keeps up its craziness. Shige's mother is ecstatic that he's finally awake and talking. Seiko approaches Shige, asking if he remembers her and Seiichi, but Shige looks at him blankly and says, "Who?" Seiko becomes rowdy and yells at him to remember her, but Seiichi's father tells her to knock it off. In the waiting room, the family is relieved that Shige is awake, and Seiko apologizes for never showing up to visit. She then says that she will wait as long as it takes for Shige to remember her and Seiichi. Seiichi and his parents leave the hospital and go to a restaurant for lunch. The whole time, Seiichi's father tries to stir up a conversation, but both Seiichi and Seiko remain silent. When their food arrives, Seiichi's father asks Seiko if he's done something to upset her, but she replies that he hasn't really done anything. Seiko is visibly upset that Shige doesn't remember them. The father tries to calm her down, saying that Shige's memory will come back eventually, but Seiko isn't having it. She says that if Shige doesn't remember, then how is she supposed to leave? The father is confused, but Seiko just says that she wants everything to fall apart. Now my first thought is that maybe Seiko wants to be blamed for Shige's condition, but if that's the case, then why has she been trying so hard to cover it up? It really makes no sense, but let's just continue. We see a dream sequence filled with jarring images, one of Seiko pushing Shige off the cliff and another of her failing to save him. Suddenly, Seiichi appears in the dream, naked, telling his mother not to look at him. But Seiko just gets closer and closer until Seiichi wakes up from the nightmare. He goes downstairs and notices his mother isn't there. His father explains that she's not feeling well. At school, Seiichi sees Fukishi, but she ignores him. When he gets to his desk, he finds a letter addressed to him. The letter reads that Fukishi is sorry about everything and wants to return his jacket and shoes by the back gate after school. When after school time comes, Seiichi doesn't go to meet her, but Fukishi finds him anyway. She hands him his stuff and Seiichi tells her that he made a promise to his mother to stay away. Fukishi replies, "Who cares about a promise you made to your mother? What do you want?" But Seiichi turns away and says, "I don't want you. I don't like you anymore. I'm done with you." As he walks away, smiling, proud of keeping his promise. He returns home and walks into his mother's room. She's asleep, but he lies down with his head on her stomach, listening to her heartbeat, remembering when he did the same as a baby. Seiko wakes up and tells him to get off. Seiichi tells her that he kept his promise and that he told Fukishi that he was done with her. But Seiko is upset because the promise was to not even get near Fukishi. She kicks him out of the room and he walks away in shame. Months pass and Seiichi goes to school like normal, but he continues ignoring Fukishi. At home, Seiko sits in a trashed living room, depressed. She tells Seiichi that they have to go visit Shige's home. On the bus ride there, Seiko rants about how they're being treated like rehab tools. Seiichi tries to relate and asks what he could do to help, but Seiko looks at him and snaps. "You? What could you do? Look at that face. Just like your daddy." They arrive at Shige's house, where they're greeted warmly by his mother. Seiko acts completely normal, smiling cheerfully and seemingly harmless. She and Shige's mom goes off to cook while Seiichi watches over Shige. Seiichi tries to talk to him, but Shige asks where his mother is. He gets up to go to the kitchen, but before he can reach it, his body begins to fail him. Seiichi catches him, and in that moment, an image of a butterfly appears. Shige then whispers, "Auntie?" Seiichi panics and pushes Shige to the ground. Shige begins to cry as Seiko and his mother rush into the room. Shige's mother asks what happened and Seiichi says that he just tripped and fell. Seiko looks at him in shock. Suddenly, Shige points a trembling finger at Seiko. His expression filled with rage, Shige's mother begins piecing everything together. Shige starts screaming and crying, yelling, "Auntie, don't push me." His mother turns to Seiko and asks what really happened on that mountain. But before Seiko can answer, Seiichi steps in between them and slaps his aunt across the face. He lashes out, screaming at her not to talk about his mommy that way. He rants that Seiko hated coming here every week and that Shige fell on his own, that he deserved it. He ends his tirade by shouting that he hates his aunt and everyone else. Seiko then wraps her arms around Seiichi and through tears says, "How can you think such a thing?" The volume ends with Seiko and Seiichi leaving Shige's home as Shige's mother stands frozen in shock. Seiichi and Seiko get on the bus ride home, where Seiko apologizes to him for calling him like his father. She thanks him. She says she wanted to tell him that she pushed Shige even though it wasn't true, but was so glad that Seiichi spoke up and told him how she truly felt. They hug each other and go back home. Seiichi's father arrives at home and walks in on Seiko and Seiichi laughing together in the kitchen, with Seiko spoon-feeding Seiichi some curry. Seiko tells his father that there isn't any food left for him, so he should just go out drinking. The father looks over at Seiichi but sees only dead, cold eyes. He becomes furious and tells him that he's done with this family as he storms off. However, Seiichi and Seiko just laugh it off. The next morning, Seiko becomes extremely clingy with Seiichi, which Seiichi seems to enjoy a bit too much. At school, he appears normal, but he's happier than he's ever been. Suddenly, his friends start picking on him and mess up his hair. As Seiichi stares into the mirror, he begins to imagine Shige's face on the body of the dead cat from his dreams. Seiichi turns around and he sees his friends with blurry, indistinct faces. He begins beating one of the kids with punches and knees to the face, all while yelling that they're all dead. A teacher arrives and breaks it up, and Seiichi is taken to detention. The teacher asks if Seiichi understands the severity of his actions, but Seiichi just asks, "Why do you think I hit him?" Later, Seiichi's friend and the friend's mother arrive and sit down. The teacher asks Seiichi to apologize, but he says he won't speak until his mother is present. Suddenly, the doors slide open and Seiko enters, deeply apologizing and saying that it's all her fault. The teacher tells her to sit down and so they can talk. Seiichi begins explaining what happened. His friends started messing up his hair, but since they and everything around him were already dead, he figured it didn't matter. He says that everything is just an illusion, all garbage, so he punched him. Everyone is confused by his words, but Seiko jumps in and says that it's all Fukishi's fault. She explains what happened between Fukishi and Seiichi, but twists the story to make it seem like Fukishi manipulated him. Seiichi agrees with Seiko, and his friend's mother looks at him in disbelief. After the meeting, Seiichi and Seiko walk home. Seiko asks him what he meant by "everyone is dead already." Before he can answer, Seiko reveals that she felt the same way when she was in high school. They then take a detour, and Seiko shows him a place that she used to visit, and she even brought Seiichi there once when he was a baby. Seiichi starts feeling sad and remembers that the dead cat on the road was nearby. He says that he wants to visit, but Seiko says that she doesn't remember and tells him that they should head home. A week later, Seiichi returns to school and notices kids are secretly bullying him. They've started drawing obscure images of him and Fukishi having sex. Later that day, Seiichi sees Fukishi alone when another boy approaches her and kisses her, all while Seiichi watches in sadness. As Seiichi walks home, his aunt suddenly pulls up beside him, asking if she can give him a ride. When he says no, she gives him a creepy look and insists. Once he's in the car, she takes a detour and tells him that Shige has gotten a lot better and has told her what really happened at the mountain. She then asks him if Seiko pushed Shige off the cliff, but Seiichi insists mommy isn't lying. His aunt explains that the reason that she kept mocking Seiko for being overprotective was because she thought Seiko was weird and was actually worried about him. She says Seiko did everything for him, but eventually, it led to him getting hurt. As she talks, Seiichi thinks about the cat on the road, remembering petting it and seeing his hand turn bloody. Suddenly, he begins punching his aunt's arm and then runs out of the car into a nearby field, while his aunt yells after him that both he and Seiko are murderers. Seiichi runs home and Seiko is already waiting for him at the front door. He tells her everything that happened with his aunt, but Seiko just sits there, smiling. She wonders out loud if everyone knows now, if the police are on their way, and if this is finally her chance to leave. Seiichi cries and tells her that he won't let them take her away and that he will never forgive them. He declares that if she disappears, then he will too. The next day, Seiichi is devastated as he walks home from school. When he gets home, he sees his aunt's car parked outside. He rushes in to find his parents and his aunt sitting together in the kitchen. Seiichi screams at his aunt to leave, but Seiko calmly tells him that it doesn't matter anymore. The volume ends with Seiichi's aunt telling Seiko one last time if she pushed Shige off the cliff, and Seiko replies, "Yes." After 8 volumes, Seiko finally admits that she pushed Shige, and now I'm just wondering, will Seiichi still be loyal to his mother after realizing that she lied to him all this time? And what's going to happen in the next 9 volumes of this series? After Seiko admits to pushing Shige off the cliff, Seiichi's aunt, in a fit of rage, lashes out at her. Seiichi's father is in shock. He can't even believe what he's hearing. Shige's father stands up from the table and demands that all 3 of them apologize. Seiichi's father tries to calm him down, but he gets punched in the face. Shige's father then grabs Seiko by the hair, but Seiichi bites into his arm in defense. His aunt holds him back as Seiichi's father continues demanding an apology from Seiko. However, she just simply says, "Let's go. Take me to the police." As she's being carried out, Seiichi clings to her legs. Seiko tells him to let go and apologizes for being a terrible mother. She says that she doesn't have to lie for her anymore. She's free to do whatever he wants. They embrace, both of them crying. Seiko is taken away in a car, but Seiichi chases after them on foot. Suddenly, Seiichi's father appears and tells him to go home, promising that he will handle things at the police station. Seiichi walks back into his house, going upstairs, and sits down in his bed. He begins taking deep breaths, almost like sighs of relief. We then cut to a dream sequence. Seiichi apologizing to Fukishi, and then things turn steamy between them. Seiichi wakes up feeling depressed, with an erection, and then begins to jake it. Later that day, his father appears in the kitchen and apologizes to him. He tells Seiichi that his mother is now in jail, and that he'll have to go talk to the police tomorrow. The next day, Seiichi arrives at the police station and is brought into an interrogation room. He begins recounting the day of the incident, but adds in extra detail about how Shige always seemed more favorable than he was by the family, and that his mother seemed to feel the same way. When Seiko grabbed Seiichi on the cliff and everyone laughed, he could tell that she looked pitiful. He continues explaining that whenever the family had lunch together, he and his mother were always left out. The detective asks why Seiichi didn't just join Shige and the others, but Seiichi says that it was because he felt bad for his mother. The detective then asks if Seiichi liked his mother, and if she had ever hurt him in the past. Seiichi says no, and continues on with the story, but deep down, he's questioning himself, wondering if he even likes his mother. He eventually gets to the part where Seiko and Shige are standing on the cliff, but Seiichi claims that he doesn't remember anything after that point. The detective gently tells him that he's his own person, that his thoughts and feelings belong to him. Seiichi sits there, thinking about his mother, and then he closes his eyes. He finally says the truth out loud. His mother pushed Shige. After the interview, Seiichi is approached by the lawyer assigned to defend Seiko. The lawyer explains that although Seiko confessed to the crimes, there's no clear motive or physical evidence, so they might not even prosecute the case. That night, Seiichi has a nightmare. His mother appears devastated and betrayed. But when he wakes up, he repeats to himself, "I belong to myself." The next morning, Seiichi returns to the hiking trail with the police as they begin investigating the crime scene. A stunt double stands in for both Shige and Seiko as Seiichi explains how the scene unfolded. Just before they recreate the push using a mannequin, Seiichi begins to remember something from when he was 3 years old, a memory buried deep inside his mind. We're shown a flashback, Seiko taking a younger Seiichi to her old spot, excitedly hyping it up as a really fun place. When they arrive, she lifts Seiichi into her arms and stares at him blankly. Then, with a disturbing smile, she says, "Pretty soon I'm going to disappear. So that means you'll have to disappear too." She adds, "You first," and throws him off the hill. Seiichi hits the ground, his head and hands bleeding as he crawls towards her. Seiko looks down at him and casually says, "Oh well, let's go home." She forces him to stand and they walk back together. On the way home is when they come across the dead kitten. The volume ends with a brutal realization that Seiichi now understands that this whole time he was the cat, wounded, discarded, and left behind by the very person who was supposed to care for him. The long-standing mystery of the dead cat is finally solved, and man, did I not see that coming. And it was far more depressing than what I originally thought. But at last, it does seem that Seiichi has finally been freed from the bond with his mother. So now let's just see what happens next in the next couple of volumes. But before we get to the next part, I just want to say that we now have a Discord server. So if you guys want to talk about your favorite series, get recommendations, and just connect with some like-minded fans of mine, then this is the server for you. We'll soon be hosting live community events like games, live reactions, and live readings only on the Discord server. So if you want to be involved in this, then why not scroll down and join our community. Also, we just opened up a Patreon, so if you guys want early access videos, uncensored videos, and just to support the channel in general, then why not go ahead and check out the Patreon. But back to the video. Weeks go by and Seiichi begins having dreams filled with hatred towards his mother. One day the lawyer visits their house and speaks with his father about the case. Seiko is currently under psychiatric evaluation, which has postponed the court date. Not only that, but her motive for pushing Shige has been revealed, and it's pretty strange. Her reasoning was that Shige looked a lot like Seiichi. Seiichi then heads back to his room and he begins laughing to himself. Another week passes and Seiichi returns to school. As he walks through the halls, people mutter about him and his mother. His former friends approach him and says that he doesn't belong there because his mother is a murderer. They bring up Fukishi, taunting him further. Seiichi stands up and silently walks out of the classroom as they continue to berate him. Just as he's about to leave, he's stopped by Fukishi. She apologizes to him for not understanding what he was going through and asks if they can talk. They sit by a river and Fukishi opens up, confessing that her mother left her when she was 5 because she cared about someone else more than her. She says that she doesn't want to do the same thing to Seiichi. Seiichi opens up in return, telling her everything his mother did to him and how he became one with her. But now, all he wants to do is be his own person. Fukishi says that she once tried to become one with him too, but now she realizes that they should be two people, but together. They bond over their shared hatred of their mothers. Fukishi comes up with the idea of drawing their mothers' faces on a bag and smashing it with rocks over and over again. As they do, Seiichi thinks about his mother's distorted, beat-up body. Afterward, they throw the bag away and they share a kiss. Seiichi confesses that he loves her. A month goes by, Seiko's evaluation is nearly over. One evening, Seiichi walks into the living room and asks his father when he's going to file for divorce. His father responds that he wants them to visit Seiko first, but Seiichi refuses, saying he wants nothing to do with her. The lawyer steps in and reminds him that family bonds are not easily broken. She tells Seiichi's father not to lose hope. The next day, Seiichi goes outside to play in the snow. Suddenly, Shige appears, limping, saying that he wants to go play. Seiichi is shocked and asks if he's here alone, but Shige doesn't answer. Shige tells Seiichi that he wants to go up the mountain, and then starts limping towards it. Seiichi tries to stop him, urging him to come inside, but Shige is insistent. Oddly, instead of heading towards the usual hiking trail, Shige appears in front of Seiko's cliff spot. He tells Seiichi to come closer. When Seiichi calls him Shige, he looks confused and says he's Seiichi. Seiichi's confused, but Shige continues speaking, saying that Shige is half dead and twisted and that he was pushed off a cliff and then left for dead. He looks at Seiichi and asks, "Are you going to leave me behind?" Seiichi replies that he won't and that he just wants him to come home. Then Shige asks, "Who am I?" Seiichi says that he's Shige, but Shige responds with, "I'm mommy." Suddenly, Shige begins to scream that she is coming back and that she won't go away. In the distance, a faint voice calls out, "Seiichi." As Shige cries out, "Mommy," Seiichi sees a figure approaching, a figure that looks like Seiko. He tells himself that it's just an illusion, but Shige tells him that he'll never be free as long as he kills his mother only in his head. Seiichi screams at him saying, "You don't know how much I've suffered." Suddenly, Seiko appears right in front of him and calmly asks, "Did you really suffer?" Seiichi breaks down laughing maniacally, bitterly, and starts unloading everything that he's been carrying. He yells at her saying that he suffered all of this time because of her. He throws all of his frustrations at her. Fukishi's torn letter, being called filthy, the kisses, everything. As his anger and resentment just grows, Seiko's figure becomes more and more visible, like a ghost gaining form from the weight of his pain. Seiichi falls to his knees and pleads with her, begs her to see him as a human being, to be happy with who he really is. But the volume ends with Seiko replying, "Coward, don't blame me. Look at yourself. You're the one who's crazy, Seiichi." Seiko continues to berate Seiichi, telling him that it's all his fault. He's the reason he doesn't love anyone. As she speaks, she begins to rip off her own skin, revealing a glowing body of light underneath, as if to show Seiichi the truth why he's at fault. Suddenly, Seiichi is transported back to the day of the incident, but this time, he's seeing it from Seiko's point of view. She walks through the woods and sees Seiichi. When he turns around, his expression is cold, harsh, as he's glaring at her. That version of Seiichi begins to speak, telling Seiko that he never wanted to be her son, and that she should atone for even giving birth to him. The real Seiichi begins to question, is this how mommy sees me in her mind? Then Shige appears and starts to fall, but Seiko catches him. However, when she looks at his face, he now has the same cold expression as the other version of Seiichi. Seiichi begins screaming at her, "Kill it, mommy," over and over, until she finally pushes Shige off the cliff, whispering, "Forgive me." Afterward, Seiko turns around and sees two Seiichis. The real Seiichi breaks down, asking himself if Seiko suffered because of him. He starts to believe it, admitting that it was his fault. In a moment of regret, he leans forward and gives Seiko a kiss, but then collapses to the ground, crying, wishing that he was never even born. Suddenly, a younger version of himself appears behind them. The child says that everything started because Seiichi didn't die the day his mother pushed him. So, he demands that Seiichi finish the job. Seiichi picks up his younger self, and just as he's about to throw him, the child begins to chant, "Kill me," over and over, his voice becoming more and more distorted. Seiichi finally throws the younger version of himself, only to be flung back into reality. Now, he's standing at the edge of the cliff, pushing Shige off it. Seiichi just stands there. He slowly walks towards where he pushed Shige, only to suddenly wake up from his dream. However, when he looks over at his bed, he notices the jacket he was wearing is soaking wet. This entire segment from the ending of the last volume to the beginning of this one is just completely insane. It highlights just how mentally unstable Seiichi is, and honestly, it's very hard to blame him. I was rooting for his comeback, but now it just seems like his mind has fully unraveled, and it looks like he may be siding with his mother again, but let's just continue. There's a knock on the door. It's the police. The detective asks Seiichi if he knows what happened to Shige last night. Seiichi is visibly shocked but says that he doesn't know. The detective then notices that both Seiichi's boots and jacket are wet. Seiichi remains silent, sitting still, and then he smiles. He tells the detective that it was just a dream. He met up with Shige, they climbed a hill, and he pushed him off. The detective asks if Seiichi can show him where this happened, and Seiichi simply replies, I honestly didn't expect this scene to be real. I thought it was just Seiichi mind tricking him again, but if he really did kill Shige, then out of everything that we just witnessed, what was actually real and what was fabricated? Also, I really hate this subtle but powerful detail, but Seiichi now looks exactly like Seiko. That one change makes it feel like he's completely lost, like he's too far gone to save. Seiichi leads the detective to the scene of the crime. They begin searching the area and eventually they find Shige's body. In that moment, Seiichi imagines Shige as the dead cat from earlier in the series. As he's being taken away by the police, he turns back and softly says, "Bye-bye, little kitty." During the interrogation, the police tell him that Shige is dead. But instead of reacting with grief, Seiichi feels relieved. He says that he's glad Shige is dead. He explains that he can no longer blame his mother. She's no longer inside him. Shige died for me, he says. I killed myself and Shige died. Thanks to that, it's all over. Everyone is gone now. Seiichi is then placed in a safe house under police supervision. That night as he sleeps, a group of butterflies land on top of him, one of them crawling into his mouth. And now I know this series is very heavy on symbolism, especially with the reoccurring image of the cat, but I still don't fully get the butterflies. My theory is that it's most likely a symbol of Seiko's psychotic behavior, like her presence lingering even in the moments of silence. Or it could just physically mean like her. But anyway, let's just keep going. As a result, he is sent to juvenile detention center where a final decision about his future will be made. The next day his lawyer visits him and tells him that she will represent him in the case. She then asks if he has anything that he'd like to say to his father. Seiichi says no. She then asks if he wants to say anything to his mother. He hesitates, but ultimately he says no. However, just as he's about to leave the room, he pauses, and asks if his mother knows what happened. The lawyer says that she doesn't know yet, but that she'll tell her the next time they speak. Later, back in his room, Seiichi is forced to meditate under the guard's instructions. As he sits in silence, he begins to regret asking the lawyer that question about his mother. Suddenly, the butterfly from earlier appears again, fluttering in front of him, and a question enters his mind. But if mommy did know, what would she think? The volume ends with Seiichi seeing a vision of his mother. She looks at him and asks, "Do you want to know?" Seiichi wakes up in a prison and is interrogated again, this time by another detective. The man tries to ask him questions about his mother, but Seiichi doesn't speak. He just wants it to all be over. The detective hands him a notebook and tells him to write down his feelings, but warns that this is just the beginning. Later, Seiichi is visited by his father and his lawyer. His father breaks down crying, but Seiichi only wants to know one thing. Has his mother heard? The lawyer tells him that she has, and that her response was to simply cry. Seiichi, confused and frustrated, can't understand why. That night, he begins frantically writing in his notebook, trying to pour out everything that he's feeling. A week passes. Haunted by his mother and plagued by guilt, Seiichi wakes up and is interviewed again. The detective looks over his notebook and realizes something devastating. Seiichi doesn't have a sense of self without his mother. She was his entire world, and now that she's gone, he's empty. To fill that void, he tried to imitate her, pushing Shige off the cliff just like she had once done to him. But Seiichi pushes back. He says that he was the one who took his mother away from herself. But then comes another question. Why did Shige come to Seiichi's house that night? But Seiichi has no answer. He simply sits there, unable to respond. Later that day, his mother's lawyer visits him with news. Seiko is out of psychiatric evaluation. But there's a problem. Seiko has changed her story. She now claims that she never pushed Shige off the cliff, that he simply fell. They ask Seiichi to confirm if Seiko really did push him. Seiichi starts to unravel. He begins to question if he imagined everything. He stands up in a panic, shouting, "What's the point of all this? What has he even been doing?" He completely breaks down and the police are forced to restrain him. In the chaos, he sees a twisted, distorted version of Seiko in front of him. Later, Seiichi wakes up alone in his room. He sees Shige's frozen corpse staring at him. Shige asks, "What did I die for?" A butterfly appears before Seiichi and then transforms into an image of his mother. A month passes. His father visits again, but Seiichi looks withered and completely drained. His father brings what he thinks is good news. Seiko has been released. All of her charges were dropped due to the lack of physical evidence. She didn't come to visit this time, but his father assures him that she will. But day after day, week after week, Seiichi wakes and Seiko never comes. As his trial approaches, his lawyer tells him that Seiko will be there. But Seiichi doesn't believe it. He quietly says, "She won't come." The lawyer advises him to express remorse over Shige's death. If he does, he might be allowed to go home. But Seiichi replies, "I don't have one anymore." March 14. Seiichi's hearing officially begins. He sits down and waits, and to his shock, his mother enters the courtroom and sits right next to him. Seiichi's father urges her to say something to her son, but all she does is smile, without even looking at him. The trial begins. The judge asks Seiichi some basic questions, but he struggles to answer. He stutters, barely able to form words. All the while, Seiko sits quietly beside him, still smiling. The judge recounts the entire incident and asks Seiichi what he thinks about while he's in detention. Seiichi answers, "Mommy." The judge then asks if he ever thought about Shige. Seiichi replies, "No, only mommy." The courtroom is stunned. The judge lays out how dire the situation really is, but Seiichi only says that Shige's death was pointless. At that point, the judge allowed his parents to speak. Seiichi's father is the first to respond, but Seiko interrupts and says, "I'm giving up motherhood." Calmly and coldly, she continues. She's done pretending to be a mother. She never genuinely felt like one. She says that she should have never had children. The judge tries to stop her, but she keeps on going. She says that she only poured love into her child in an attempt to redeem herself for the love that she's never received growing up. The judge warns her again, if she doesn't stop, she'll be removed from the courtroom. But Seiko doesn't care. She continues. "Now's the perfect time to get rid of my child. He's a murderer after all. I can finally live my life." She then smiles and says, "Thank you, Seiichi, for being a murderer." The detectives order her to leave the courtroom, and she cheerfully complies, telling Seiichi bye-bye. Seiichi, trembling with rage, stands up, grabs his mother by the shirt, and yanks her to the ground. He climbs on top of her, hands around her neck, but he doesn't choke her. Seiko looks at him and calmly says, "Oh, I see." The officers pull Seiichi off and escort him away. Seiko brushes herself off and asks if she can leave now. Seiichi calms down and then is brought back into the courtroom, but now his perspective begins to warp. Everyone, the judge, the lawyers, the adults, they start becoming visibly distorted, their forms becoming unrecognizable. They start to look like bad drawings. Finally, the judge gives Seiichi the chance to say something. Seiichi simply replies, "No, Your Honor." The volume ends with everyone in the courtroom disappearing. We hear the judge declare, "I hereby sentence you to a juvenile reformatory." And in that moment, Seiichi's body transforms into a poorly drawn figure, like a fading sketch. Then, he disappears entirely. And that is volume 7 through 12. One of the most shocking and honestly heartbreaking emotional moments that I've ever read in my entire life. Back-to-back volumes are just filled with intense emotions, like Seiichi becoming mentally broken from his mother's manipulation, to him finally breaking free of his restraints, to then just to end up going to jail after being mentally tortured by his own mind. The character development, or should I say character downfall, of Seiichi is again honestly heartbreaking. The fact that this 13, 14-year-old boy is going through something as painful as this, the saddest thing about it is that it feels too real. It's not a story about monsters or aliens or secret government agents, but a disturbing psychological thriller about a boy and his mother. There are questions that I have, like about how Shige got to Seiichi's house even though he lives literally miles away. What is going on with Fukishi and Seiichi now that they just started up their relationship, but now Seiichi is in jail? And the most important question, how reliable is Seiichi as a narrator for this story? We do still have a couple of volumes to figure that out, so I'm not really tripping right now. Definitely the last 3 chapters of volume 12 were my favorites because it does really feel like the final nail to the coffin that is Seiichi's psyche. I don't even know what's going to be happening in the next 5 volumes, but we'll just have to see next week when we finish the entirety of Blood on the Tracks. But thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to join the Discord server and to look at the Patreon if you're interested. If you want more horror videos like this one, then why not scroll down and hit that subscribe button. But I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.